Coming up in today's rock pooling vlog, speedy starfish, hairy hermit crabs, the inside of barnacles, warty anemones, a brush with brittle stars, and something that led to this amazing quote.
It's pretty raunchy for as far as slugs get. Hello and welcome back to another rock pooling vlog. I am so happy to be here because rock pooling is amazing, as always. But this is the start of potentially one of the most fantastic weeks of the entire year, because this week is a week of spring tides. Now this is something we didn't get to experience last year, not because it didn't happen, but because of the whole lockdown thing. And so I'm making the most of it this year. And what this basically means is each tide that you have is given a number, which is basically the measured height of how high or low that tide's going to be. And I'm pretty sure it's measured from a thing called chart datum, which is basically where people mark where the sea is. That sea at chart datum is the baseline level. It shouldn't ever go below that, and it only goes above, and you measure the tide up from that level. So a good high tide would be, say, 8.2 meters, which is 8.2 meters higher in distance upwards from chart datum. A good low tide that we normally rock pool at is anywhere between 1.2, hopefully it's under 1, usually about 0.8, which is what today's tide is. But spring tides are when the moon, which caused the tides, gives a little extra oomph, and it does it for a whole week. Now today is the first day of the start of these kind of spring tides, and it is a 0.8 tide, which is on a usual month, probably the lowest tide or one of the lowest tides you're going to get for that entire month. This is just the start of the week. The rest of the week, which you will see, not the rest of the week in your time, but I will mark them as spring tides, part 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing. It gets to minus 0.17 or something like that. Minus. It goes below where people think it should never go below. So the rest of the week is only going to get better than this, which is really, really fantastic. So cool. Now I'm not going to lie, I have just filmed this section because as you watch behind me, as we've been talking, the tide is coming in pretty fast. And I was just over there like 5 minutes ago. So I'm going to show you that footage and then we're going to carry on rock pooling around here. But I just wanted to make sure that I got over there because, well, I'm going to set up a time lapse. You'll see just how fast the tide will come in. Okay, play the footage. Editing me now.
The seaweeds at this time of year are absolutely stunning. They really start to take off in spring, and I just love looking at all of the different textures and different seaweeds you can find. I actually have a video coming out soon more about seaweeds that you can find rock pooling, so make sure to subscribe to not miss that, because there are some stunning bits of seaweed I recorded today, but I'm saving that for a later video. Sorry, you're just going to have to wait. But like in spring, there's lots of eggs around, and this is the egg of a green leaf worm, and lots of baby creatures like this absolutely adorable tiny hermit crab, which I actually loved seeing because he has a hole in his shell and you can see the soft body that usually curls round a hermit crab. We also found this little cute starfish. Starfish are fantastic. They are quite evil. They are really good predators, and they move with these tube feet. Now this footage is sped up by 3 times, so they don't move quite as fast as this, but they can get a move on when they want to, especially when they know that mussels, which are their favourite food, are in the area, and they like to hang around. So if you find a beach with mussels on, you'll probably find some starfish. Finding snails is always wonderful, especially when they're out of their shell. They are so much cuter than you would think, and with great patterns. And this little guy was out of the water doing his own thing, so definitely an odd move for a snail to be out of the water, but he looked like he was loving life. this was all the life I found on the bottom of this rock. As a researcher of biofouling, which is the things that like to live on man-made surfaces, I loved this bottom of this rock. It was very similar to what I study, and these are bryozoans, so each little circle is its own individual animal, but they join up to form a colony. And then this was a very brave hermit crab. I picked him up and he let me film him, and he even came out of his shell like as I was holding him, which I'd never had with a hermit crab before. So that was really fun because I got to get this gorgeous shot of, you know, close up of his face and his mouth, which I haven't really been able to capture before because you can get it at the perfect angle. So thank you, Mr. Hermit Crab.
Hi everyone, editing me here from the future. I don't jump into rock pooling vlogs normally, but there is some cool stuff that I want to show you, or at least explain in this video, so I'm going to be popping in a few times. Now this first one is, I filmed some lovely brittle stars. Now these are brittle stars. They are colourful and wonderful, but they have a particular name, or common name at least, in that they are called brittle stars because they are brittle. Now what happened, now I want to explain what happened next, and you'll see it in a minute, but in no way did I deliberately cause this, or it just happened by accident, or potentially it could have happened before and I just got there as it happened. But the thing with rock pooling is you always try and be as least invasive as possible. You want to treat all the species with care, and brittle stars have a defense mechanism where they lose limbs if they're being threatened, a bit like I think that lizards can lose part of their tail, or some can, and eventually the arm will grow back, so it loses it so that it can escape and move. And you can see they actually can move quite fast when they try to. I was rock pooling and I've never actually seen this properly happen before, but I lifted up the rock and immediately there was a load of brittle stars underneath, and one or two of which must have panicked, or maybe they'd done it before, but I think maybe they panicked and they got rid of one of their limbs. And then I filmed the limb. I suppose it must go through like nervous shocks or just still wriggling, which is what you're about to see. But I just wanted to put out there that I in no way went out on purpose to film this. It was an accident that it happened, and I thought, why not best make the most of it by recording it to at least show you what happens and kind of educate you guys on. That's why I don't really ever hold brittle stars or want to touch them too much or touch them at all, because they really do panic. But those brittle stars will grow back, and hopefully it doesn't impact them too much, which is why they can lose that limb as a defense mechanism. But I'll show you that now. It's a bit creepy, but yeah, here are some wiggling legs.
Okay, back to some more normal viewing now, but I thought that was important to share, and we're back to looking at fully limbed brittle stars now. And this, I love this footage of this worm because I love watching when I get home species up close, because there's a better view on here than even in real life. And I don't know the exact species of this worm. If I work it out, it will be in the description below. I will try and work it out at some point, but it's definitely a type of ragworm. Now, worms on land seem to be, you know, they seem like something that's very benign, but actually in the marine environment they are predators, and they will go around and hunt things out. And you can see he's got his 4 eyes at the front. He's using his front appendages to feel around. He'll use the bristles on the sides of his body to help him swim and to feel about and move through the rocky shore. And I just think that that is really exciting to see. You know, you can tell that they're burrowing and looking around and using all of those things on the front of their face to sense things out, and that is really quite exciting. But this is a quick time lapse just to show you, I suppose, how quick the tide is coming in. It may not look super dramatic, but within the space of 10 minutes, 5 minutes even, the water rises up pretty far, and it's always interesting just to watch the sea take back where you were just exploring, and even coming back at high tide and just seeing, you know, how much water lands on top of where you were standing. You just can't, I still can't quite believe the power of that.
So we just found an absolutely giant anemone. And I think it could possibly be a strawberry anemone.
It was not a strawberry anemone.
Be a dahlia anemone.
It was a dahlia anemone. Okay, so I'm including that I often actually film stuff sometimes and don't get it right, and I have to just cut that out and voice over the top. So I just wanted to include, since I'm already talking on here, that I get ID wrong all the time. And I've actually hopefully started, I'm going to start putting like little descriptions of the seconds and what species are in the description below, so that we can change the species as we like ID them together. So if you know what species are, or you want to know what species are, let me know, and then I'll add them in and make sure that we're getting like a list so that we can work out what it is and edit it after it's published. But moving on, the reason you can tell it's different from a strawberry anemone is, although this had dots and coloration put me off, you should really be careful when trying to ID things with colour. A lot of the time colours go really wacky in the marine world and they don't follow the same pattern, unless it's written in an ID guide that it is specifically only ever found in one colour or this type of colour. Really, colour can't be used. But what you can see is these like really warty dots on this anemone when you see it. And stuff sticks to that, and that is really characteristic of a dahlia anemone. So if you find a giant anemone that's really warty and sticky, then you've got a dahlia anemone. But look at this footage, it is far cooler than that description. This anemone, it was a bit of not twig, but looked like a twig maybe, and on the end of this twig was something clear and something I recognised immediately but was very surprised to see. And this is something I've kind of wanted to show for a while. I see it a lot in my research, but it's really difficult to like film it's just difficult to film, especially when I'm busy with the research kind of stuff. But this is what the inside of a barnacle looks like. So the stuff at the end that looks a bit feathery, now that is the cirri, that is the feeding legs, and that's what comes out of the barnacle when you see it feeding. The rest of the stuff is all clear and on the inside, and that's kind of what stays in the barnacle all of the time. I can't distinguish what bits are what, because I think it's also a bit mashed up from being floating in the sea, but this is basically what it looks like on the inside. And it is one of the reasons it's difficult to show you barnacles, because it's really difficult to get the barnacle out without destroying all of those such dainty, tiny, delicate parts of that barnacle. And that's why they're so cool, is that they have this really hard exterior, but inside they're just soft and very, very, very fragile. So that was a really cool find, and I also think that I'm now getting some sort of rock pooling supervision to spot that right on the end of that I'm impressed. I'm hoping that the transition into rock pool woman, a type of spider woman, but rock pooling, like superpowers is happening. So keep your fingers crossed, people.
I can't get over how calm it is here today. If you've ever been to St Andrews, you know that there is 1,000-mile-an-hour winds 1,000 days out of the year. Yes, that is how windy it is. That makes extra days, the wind does here. So it's just so calm. It's so nice. It's like birds sing. Ooh. I think I should just get on with it now, shall I? Now I'm exploring deep inside the caverns of this rock into the caves of unknown. Yeah, because this is where I found a nudibranch last year here. It's the only time I've ever seen one here. So I'm going to have a quick rummage and see if I can find a teeny weeny baby sea slug. But there seems to have been a lot more rocks chucked in here and battered since I was here, like a couple of months ago. God, like 6 months ago now, maybe even. More than that, 7, 8 months. Oh, too long. So we'll see if one or that one is still about. Doesn't look like there is a nudibranch that I've seen yet, but there are baked bean sea squirts, obviously. We've got nudibranchs too, and not only are they nudibranchs, I think they might be mating. I don't know if you can see in nudibranchs if they're mating, but they're like right next to each other, which is pretty raunchy for as far as slugs get. I love this tiny cavern. You have no idea how gently I turned that rock back over. Oh my goodness, how special. Now, I don't know the exact realms of how nudibranchs mate, but I do know that land slugs have a weird system. I think they're land slugs, it could be nudibranchs too, which is why I'm questioning. I'm going to have to look it up. They go past each other really slowly, but I imagine to them it's high speed, and they shoot what is called love spears. Yes, I've not made this up. They are spears that shoot out of its body and spear into the other snail, and they both do this at the same time, and that's what carries basically like the sperm over to one another. And I think they're hermaphrodites, so you don't have to have a male and a female, or it could be male and a female, just one getting shot. I don't know. Just remember the love spear bit, if I'm honest. That's what stuck in my head from lectures. It could well be that something similar happens in sea slugs, but the problem is if you shoot something through water, it probably requires a lot more energy and could get waylaid by currents, so maybe they have to lie next to each other. I did notice that they were top to tail, so do I have to say the number? Or are you there already? Let's keep it family friendly, but you get the gist. I imagine that must be the same when you have to shoot the love spear. So I never thought I would capture anything like that. I never thought I would see that moment. That is really cool. I can't wait to get home and get some footage off to some more nudibranch experty people on Twitter, which is why I love social media. So that at the tip of my fingers, which are currently pink and very, very cold, you can have access to asking people that know far more than you about really bizarre and specific things, which is just fabulous, and they're my favourite type of people, about cool stuff like this. So I can't wait to see what they say, and either maybe I'll insert it here, or if it is true, I think maybe I'll do a whole video on something like that, because that is so special. That is, depending on how long they mate for, that is a very short amount of time. Maybe I'll come back in a while and see if they've laid any eggs. I'm so happy. Not only, I can't believe that they were there. That's so cool. My mind is blown, and I'm feeling very lucky, very privileged to have to have seen and filmed that. Wow. Okay, so I did do some research on nudibranchs mating, and yes, they are definitely mating. They have to do it top to tail. I don't think they use like the spearing technique, but they are both male and female, and just kind of behind, I suppose, where you would imagine the ear of a person is on this nudibranch is kind of one area, and then at the back, kind of where you would imagine, I suppose, the hips of a person is the other area. And so they have to line top to tail so that the male and female areas match up with the other male and female areas, and then they can both reproduce with each other, which is really handy when you're small and slow moving. You don't have to hunt around for lots of different partners. You can just find two of the same, and they can both reproduce each other. And it only lasts in nudibranch for about 5 to 10 minutes. So, I mean, maybe unfortunately for them that I rudely kind of walked into their bedroom, but for filming that and for seeing something that only happens for 5 to 10 minutes, how special is that? It's amazing. Amazing. So we are finishing off today's rock pooling session with this absolutely gorgeous sea scorpion fish who is bright red. I've only ever seen a red variation of this fish species once before, and they're just the masters of camouflage and so incredible. He hung around just long enough for me to film him from a couple of angles, and then it really started to rain. So didn't film an outro for the video, but I thank you all for watching so much. Please comment on what was your favourite and ask me any questions about the species. And this is the start of what is one of the most epic weeks of rock pooling I've ever had, and that will be released, videos coming out in the next couple of weeks. So make sure to subscribe and like so that I know you like the series, and I will see you next week with another video. Bye everyone.